Hi everybody, Richard Tremors here again, Artificial Lawyer TV. Today we're doing another special interview all about Legal Innovators California, our landmark conference in San Francisco, taking place June 11th and 12th. With us to tell us a bit more about what he'll be speaking about is one of our guests, Nick Reed from Knowable. Hey Nick.
Hey, Richard. Hello, everyone.
Good to have you on the show. As some of you know, Nick is the CEO of Knowable, which is based out in the US. Nick, before we get into talking about the conference itself, how's the company going? What are you looking at these days? What are you focused on?
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know us, Knowable is what we call the executed agreements company. So that means we work with big companies and we take their contracts, their signed final executed agreements, and we allow our companies to do what they're trying to do every day with them, which is to ask and answer questions. What I think, per your question, Richard, about where we are today, one of the things that I really am enjoying, and I think that generative AI has unlocked in a way that just hasn't been possible, since we started Ravel back in kind of as an idea at Stanford Law School in 2010, all the way through today. All of the projects that I've been working on using AI and legal documents and trying to create AI technology for lawyers have been kind of skirting around doing what we really wanted to allow our users to do, which is just ask questions in natural language and get the answers. So whether it was judge analytics with Ravel, you had to go in and select your judge, select your district, select your court, and you got analytics, and that helped you answer questions strategically. But you couldn't say, "Hey, Ravel, I would like to know what the chance of my motion to dismiss being granted in front of Judge Coe in the Northern District, California, is based on these facts." Similarly, with contracts, we've had to create this very big, complex system using the best technology available until about 2 years ago. And you would filter, search, use analytics, but all of these things to really kind of approximate what we can do right now, which is super exciting, which is say, I'd like to see my latest contract with X company. I want to know, are there any amendments? Has this provision changed from the original MSA? And what are the current prevailing rights or obligations in this contract? And today, for the first time ever, with what we most recently launched, we call it Ask Knowable. It's kind of our first foray into asking and answering service within Knowable. You can come in and say, do I have the right to increase prices in my contract with Google? And
Mm.
we can answer that question. And that to me, Richard, is just kind of the most, it's so simple in some ways, but it's so hard to get to. And it's taken us so long, yet so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and also, I mean, when it comes to technology, all the best things and also the hardest things are the simple ones, aren't they? You know,
Always.
like
Yeah.
so picking up a mobile phone and having really, really effective and easy access to the internet, something that
Yeah.
neither Nokia nor BlackBerry were able to achieve really. And then someone at Apple comes along and bang, we're into a whole new world. So,
Changes everything.
and talking of whole new worlds, we've talked before about your views on, the development of AI in the legal markets, and you were mentioning just off camera before that you've got a slightly new take now, a different view of how things are evolving.
Yeah, so Richard, we had a great conversation a few years back about this kind of idea, and I wrote a little brief piece on it that was there have been three really big waves of legal transformation, dating back to the original kind of LexisNexis and putting case law online. The first wave was really about changing how lawyers did things using technology. So take the filing cabinet, take the book and the bookshelf, digitize it, allow it to be searchable, allow it to be online, like you were just mentioning. But you weren't fundamentally, the lawyers still did the same activities. It's just how they did it was using technology to be more efficient. E-discovery, doc management, a lot of things that kind of did that. The second wave really focused on changing who did the work. So instead of how we did it, it was, can we outsource this work to India, or can we get lawyers that used to work at law firms that are much cheaper, that can be on a bench, companies like Axiom and then eventually Deloitte and kind of all the big consulting firms that moved in. And so we were taking what was traditionally legal work, changing who did it and making it cheaper. The third wave, what you and I think had a really good conversation about, Richard, was was AI and kind of new technology allowing us to change what lawyers did? And the idea was with AI and data analytics and kind of turning language into data using AI, lawyers could become more proactive, more strategic, and kind of approach the law in a really different way. I have a spin on that today because fundamentally, one, I don't know that that's changing what lawyers do as much as we might have thought it did because
Mm.
lawyers have been strategic, they've been proactive. It was just really hard. And so it's kind of unlocking this thing that's been hard. But the question that I'd ask you, Richard, is maybe
Mm.
with generative AI, maybe in some ways what technology is now allowing us to do is let lawyers do what they always were supposed to be doing, but
Mm.
technology is rendered impossible. So that there's just so much data today that lawyers are responsible for. Petabytes and petabytes of research data, of contract data, no matter where you are, that it's a very stressful experience. And in the end, very expensive lawyers are spending a lot of time trying to find the right document to opine on, the right clause to read and think about. What we want them to be doing is the thinking and the opining, not the finding. And so maybe what Gen AI is really going to be able to unlock for us is a way to get lawyers back to what they should have been doing, what we want to pay them to do, and
Mm.
where the value really is generated.
Yeah, I totally agree. And wow, you opened up a whole bunch of interesting thoughts there. I mean, one, yes, totally agree. I mean, I think the idea of a rebalancing is absolutely critical here. I mean, you could argue that the reason why the legal world is so large now is because it's absorbed tasks that really should not be under the
Mhm.
umbrella of regulated practicing lawyer. I mean,
Yeah.
there are some tasks that really, the idea that you need someone who spent several years at law school and has a $300,000 education and is in this enormously complex and expensive environment around them. They really don't need to be there to do that work. And
Mhm.
that needs to be rebalanced. That's clearly a key point. And of course, the data volume, absolutely. I think for me, the way I'm starting to see this is that we need a sort of power sharing agreement
Mhm.
between the lawyers who are the master of their domain and the AI, which is effectively moving onto their territory. And we've got to get to a position. I mean, I wrote an article about this a few weeks ago, and the key point is that I think unconsciously lawyers tend to think of themselves as the absolute rulers of their kingdom. It's like the divine right of lawyers to rule, right?
Yeah.
It's
It is indoctrinated into our minds during law school, Richard. We
and rightly so because before technology can really get involved in truly productive activity, you want the lawyers to deeply feel that they are responsible and that they do
Mhm.
have to check everything. They do have to be completionist and they do have to be sort of catastrophist, if that's a word, you know, and think through, oh yeah, no, I need to add a caveat, and oh no, I need to redraft that, and
Mhm.
I better just rewrite this and rewrite this and rewrite this and cover off every single possible thing. And so my contract becomes 2,000 pages long eventually, which then
Yeah.
gets redlined by the other party because they're worried about
Well,
2,000 things.
Richard, do you know what we call that? And I don't know if this is a word, but we use it. It's a contractstrophe.
Mm.
It's
Yeah,
contract meet catastrophe.
exactly. And that is completely reasonable. And it's a
Yeah.
natural human outcome for putting a human individual in this impossibly complex situation
Mhm.
between two parties. Well, let's say one is a bank, multi-billion dollar bank, and a multi-billion dollar corporate. And there's this human individual
Yeah.
who only has the same capacities as other humans, in terms of how long they can stay awake and so forth, and sticking them right in the middle of that thing. It's a very unfair situation, really. So I think we've got to sort of look more optimistically and positively at AI as not just like this little gopher that sits in the corner that is a kind of like servant, kind of
Mhm.
serf, SERF, serf to the lawyer. And the lawyer actually will start to welcome power sharing with
Yeah.
these AIs and the AI tools, whatever you want to call them. But the idea is obviously final responsibility remains with the lawyers, right? So they have to sign
Yeah,
off. But that doesn't mean that you have to behave as if everything is done by you. I mean, an analogy would be a chef, right? There are certain things that a master chef will automate, right?
sure.
It's like cooking some toast, which is then going to get cut up into croutons and then put on the fancy salad, right?
Or chopped garlic already chopped and ready and waiting for you. And yeah,
Exactly. And now let's imagine the sous chefs and all the junior chefs. Well, some of these are going to be replaced by machines because the machines are now so good they will do just as better job,
mhm,
just as good a job. And I think we've just got to get into this mode of thinking that AI is not there just to be this little gopher. Because if we
yeah.
do, and lawyers remain the absolute, monarchs of their domain, we're never, ever, ever going to escape the status quo. And that's actually not good for the lawyers either, as mentioned. I think it's actually a win-win. But it's going to require
Well,
not just a tech jump, it's going to require a sort of philosophical jump.
so I think Richard, actually, you're hitting on the next topic that I wanted to speak about with you, which I'm really kind of interested in, which is agentic AI, which we're all obviously talking about and interested
Mm,
in, but just the actual etymology, right? So agentic AI means that AI is going to be your agent, and you're speaking about power sharing. So agency in law has a very precise definition. We
mm,
have to study what agency means. There are various types of agency. There is a time when you're allowing someone to act with all of your permission, with implied permission. So, we have this notion of express, implied, and then kind of de facto because you're doing it. And so there are these different realms of how much do you let someone else act with your authority that already exist in law. And it's actually quite well defined. And so I think that we can talk about something really similar with AI, which is, what level of agency are we going to give AI and AI agents? So,
mm,
is your agency the ability to do research for me and just give me a research paper of which I'm going to edit, reread? You're going to show me all the sources. I can swap sources, change them, think about it. Am I going to let you file for me? Am I going to let you generate the document and file that document? In contracts, we would say kind of, are you going to you can tell me about what's in my contract repository. You can say what is certain rights and obligations, what are the rights and obligations that I have with the counterparty, but will I let you then draft a response? Say I want to renew a contract or terminate an agreement. Are
mm,
you allowed to draft it? Is that just a first draft? Do you get to send it? It's like, how far does the agency, how far does this kind of power sharing go? And I
mm,
think that's where the conversation needs to go and what we really need to be speaking about, which is how comfortable this is going to happen. How far are you comfortable with it going? And what are the proof points that we need for you, the attorneys that are using our tools, um, so that you will allow us to do it? Because we are all, and by we, I mean all legal technology companies right now,
mm,
are learning from, experimenting with, and thinking about how agentic AI is going to become part of our platform in the next 2 to 3 years, if not, next 6 to 9 months. And what we need to do is figure out what that deal is between us, the legal tech companies, and corporate counsel's office, the GC's office, the law firms. And that I think right now is not well understood, not well defined,
mm,
and that's where so it's almost the power sharing agreement, Richard. I'd say
mm.
is between the legal tech companies and our users, because we're going to be monitoring, developing, testing, quality assuring
Mm.
the AI that they're using.
Yeah, yeah. Again, many good points there. I mean, the you can only have power sharing if you have trust, right? SPQR, as it were, right? It
Yeah,
only works
for
because
sure.
there's a degree of trust between all those
Sure.
different letters, right? Um, the trust has to be based on visible, understood performance, right? Because trust cannot just be given freely. There has to be, at least initially, at least at this transitional stage which we're going through, which is probably going to go on for the next 4 or 5 years before we hit some kind of plateau of quality that people don't need to check anymore. So then that brings up accuracy. And very, very smoothly performing agentic workflows. I think we will get there, but of course, I mean, as I'll always keep mentioning that, we've got to stick lawyers on the end of the process as quality control,
Yep.
because you can't sign off on a legal output, at least once it disappears outside I mean, maybe from a legal tech company or an ALSP or a combination of which goes to the in-house counsel, and there's still a few loose ends. But once that
Mhm.
in-house counsel signs off on that product and it goes off into the corporate and it gets disseminated off, into the legal ecosystem around it and corporate legal corporate ecosystem. Yeah, I'm going to cut that out. Yeah, ecosystem. It is another one,
We
ecosystem.
have those too. We do
E-
have those.
ecosystem. Someone has to take responsibility for it. So but yeah, so to sum up, totally agree. I mean, we're moving into a very, very, very interesting state, and ironically now, and it's amazing how fast we got there. Is that it's becoming less and less about the technology. I mean,
Mhm.
there'll be technological aspects around improving accuracy. I think that's going to be vital. But we've already reached a point now where I think some of the biggest steps are actually going to be intellectual steps, philosophical steps,
Mhm.
metaphysical, you know, basically just being able to rethink your processes. I mean, if you think about it, right, the technology already exists at a high enough accuracy for many, many law firms and in-house legal teams to completely change how they work, if they wish to, right? It's
Mhm.
good enough. Is it perfect? No. Does it need to be checked? Yes. But is it 80+% good enough, right? If that is true, and it is, why aren't we seeing gigantic change right across the legal market? Why isn't this like this
Mhm.
incredible domino effect breaking out across the Western world? Why isn't that? I think a lot of it is ingrained culture.
Yeah. So I'm going to hit on two things, Richard. So one, going back to kind of the three tenets you just put out there, I really like the way you said it, and this is something we are constantly reminding our clients of at Knowable, and that we'll be talking about at Legal Innovators in San Francisco when you guys come visit us in a few weeks, which I'm really excited for. So we talk about the three core tenets of making Gen AI work. At Legal Week, my panel was actually titled how to make Gen AI that actually works for lawyers. And the idea was that, a lot of people are just saying we're going to put a foundational model on top of whatever data we have, and then you can ask questions and it's going to answer. And the truth is no, it's not going to be good enough for law. So how do you make something that is good enough for the law and for lawyers? Um, you spoke about trust, so let's call the first tenet this principle of trust. So how do you create trust? Trust has to be in really pristine data. For the LLM to give you answers that are not hallucinating, you need them to be grounded. So at Knowable, the way we approximate that is our data is your contracts, and we do a lot of work ex ante on what we call data cleansing. So we remove duplicates, we remove documents, missing pages, missing signatures. We work with this very large client. Recently, they said, we're only giving you contracts, guys. There was a picture of a baby and a cat. We removed the cat and the baby. But Gen AI, think you tell that it's a contract and it sees a cat, who knows what it's going to come up with. So the first principle I think is really clean, pristine data. The second one you mentioned is accuracy. Accuracy, we still have a need for really high quality data. So it's not just clean and pristine and closed, but it's accurate metadata, accurate grounding data that goes into the model that's infused at the right points in time. And I think a lot of people want to shirk that part of the equation because it's always the easiest is to just not do the hard work of creating really high quality data. And that's still really important. And then your last point on QA, um, this is what has always been true and remains true. Getting AI to work the best for the law still takes a little bit of teaching and massaging. And this is different than training, right? This is not training in the sense of kind of data science and training models. This
Mm.
is teaching. And the best way we can do that now is in the form of prompts. And so having data scientists sit with lawyers, legal SMEs, writing prompts that are really thoughtful, that are teaching the AI certain notions about the law can really transform your answers and make them much better and reduce the QA ex post for the law for the firm, for the corporate in-house lawyer, or whoever it's going to be. So I think those three tenets, you nailed it, Richard. Trust, accuracy, QA, pristine data, accurate, high quality data, and then teaching these complex parts of the law because LLMs still don't know those, and we need to
Mm.
help them get there.
Wow. Yeah, fantastic. So many good points again. And I would like to respond to those, but I'm not going to because we need to probably talk a little bit about the event. For Legal Innovators California, which, if you're watching this, takes place in San Francisco, June 11th to 12th. Tickets are still available. Um, what is, well, what are one of the sort of two or three things that you'd be looking out for at the events?
Yeah, well, first of all, for all of you coming and for those of you still deciding, June 11th and 12th are two of the almost only surefire days to have beautiful weather in San Francisco. I'm born and raised in the city, and we get a window from about mid-May to mid-June before the fog rolls in, and then we get September and October. But good choice, Richard, on that. So I encourage you all to come. Um, I'm always excited to hear what the latest groups of new startups are thinking about and working on. There's a moment in the startup journey when you have no obligations, you have no kind of entanglements with big clients yet, and you're really able to be free and think about what is the most exciting way we could use this technology to really change things.
Mm.
Sometimes you get it terribly wrong, and sometimes you get it terribly right. But there is this moment where when you don't have too many client contracts, you don't have too many clients asking you to change your product or to do these things to respond to them, that you really get to be free in your innovative passion. So really excited to see who shows up and what they're working on. Um, the other thing that for me is really helpful about your conferences, Richard, and generally it's the ability to talk to clients just about technology. You know, people come knowing that we're in a space where we're going to be talking about one thing and we're going to talk about tech, AI, and how it's changing the practice. And you get some really open answers during these conferences, and just little things like what's working for you and what's not right now. That can be hard to do in a Zoom, if it's a prearranged Zoom video conference and it's partially sales, partially product demo, you don't get that same kind of unfettered reality of what's happening on the ground. So super excited for that too.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, no, indeed, indeed. And yeah, you when you've got a panel or it's a, fireside chat or whatever it is, yeah, there's always the unexpected. There's always that opportunity for some real revelations to come. And then the questions from the audience, because the audience is going to be packed with really interesting people too. And so yeah, I mean it's a real sort of coming together of so many people, so many ideas, so many companies. But thanks, Nick. It's been a fantastic chat. I wish we could keep going. But if you found this conversation interesting, there will be many more like it, and a chance also to meet Nick and his team at Legal Innovators, California, San Francisco, June 11th and 12th. If you'd like to find out more, it's pretty easy to find. Just type in Legal Innovators California into Google and take it from there. But that's all we have time for. So just like to say, thank you very much, Nick.
All right. Thank you, Richard. And we hope to see all of you there.
Exactly. Thank you.